Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Multilinguals Live. My name is Tetsu Young from Ask Tetsu.
Hello, everyone, from wherever you're connecting from. My name is Utelima Khariba from Uta's International Lounge.
That's right. Depending on where you are from, it's good morning, it's good afternoon, or it's good evening for our really special guest today, Dr. Beniko Mason from Shitennoji University. Now, at the very beginning of the year, if you recall, we had Dr. Stephen Krashen with us, who talked to us about the comprehensible input. And one very effective input is stories. So today we have Dr. Mason to talk to us about stories and how it can be effective in helping children learn languages, acquire languages, I should say. So, Dr. Mason, thank you for taking the time, especially late in Japan right now. But let's start everything off with just some of your background. Jen, we want to know who Dr. Mason is. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your involvement in the world of languages, and maybe even some little stories about your collaboration with Dr. Krashen.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Beniko Mason. I'm an English teacher in Japan, and I have been teaching English in Japan since 1981. I have been using graded readers to teach reading, and I added story listening. I do not call it storytelling, and I will tell you why I do not call it storytelling later. But I have added story listening into my reading program so that my students will be able to start reading in English. Japanese students will start reading in English and will be able to become free voluntary readers. And so that's what I have been doing. And I still teach, although I retired 2 years ago from the university, Shitennoji University. I still teach at the university. I have 2 classes to teach older adults. And what I do is during the class, I just tell stories. I tell 3 stories in 90-minute long class. And students check out books from the library and read books, and I guide them to different books. My research, I have been working on finding out whether story listening and reading books are not only effective but also efficient. But my research interest has been, or question has been, what would happen if students just listen to stories and read books? What would happen to test scores? Can they improve without conscious study, conscious effort, and without spending time on study? That has been my research question. And Dr. Krashen has taught me a lot of things over the years, and I cannot start listing what he taught me, but he, in every speech that he gives, that has been a teaching for me. And his research papers, to me, is like reading a detective story or mystery story. You start with a question, and you don't know how the question is going to be answered. And at the end of this, not story, but at the end of the research paper, he tells you something completely different. And then you go, oh, that's why. And so I love reading his papers. And so I learn a lot of things from talking to him, listening to his talk, and reading his papers.
We all do. We all do.
Yeah.
I think every time we ask him a question, the way he answers is always, "I have a story." Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's amazing. He's an amazing man. I have been very fortunate to be able to talk to him very closely. Yeah.
I feel the same. I'm not a close collaborator by any stretch of the imagination, but very, very fortunate to have a little contact with him and have him on our show and in my other events that I have had in past years. All right. So let's get to the core right away then.
Okay.
What exactly why do you think learning languages through stories is so effective?
Oh,
what is that element?
Just because you use stories, it doesn't mean it's effective. The way how you use it, is important. If you just told a story, and if the listener doesn't understand what you are talking about, then even when you are telling a story, it doesn't mean anything. And so the important part of using a story is that you've got to tell a story in the optimal way. Just a second. My cat is screaming at me at the door.
She wants to be with us, listen to everything.
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the just because there are lots of people use stories. Computer program uses a story. Lots of people put on the YouTube videos and read a story aloud, show the pictures and animations and read a story aloud. I don't know if those things are as effective as what I call story listening. But have I answered your question, Tetsu?
Kind of. I think the key is how you use a story is key. It's like a car is very useful for getting from point A to point B, but it's a very dangerous thing if you use it recklessly. So how we use the story, but I wasn't too sure on where you were saying there's a story listening and the storytelling. That's different. So which part of that is making it more effective?
Oh, okay. Do you want me to go on to explaining what story listening is now?
I guess, yes. Your website talks about story listening and guided self-selected reading. So I guess that's we should go right into that. Please give us a little overview.
Okay. Story listening is not a recitation of a memorized story. I don't know what other teachers do when they tell a story. And I've seen some people on YouTube videos that they draw pictures like I do, but it's not quite the same as I do. Okay. Story listening and guided self-selected reading are based on the theory. And it's not because, it's not like I know it's good, therefore I'm doing it type of thing. Let's see. I mean, telling stories are very good, but then, the story listening aims at or tries to provide optimal language input for effective and efficient natural language acquisition for the people who are sitting in front of you. That is story listening. And so you adjust the language, you change the story sometimes, you do whatever you need to do to have the people in front of you understand what the story is about. And so we use a strategy called comprehension aiding supplementation. And I do not think other people use this as extensively as we do. Dr. Krashen has talked about this in many different papers and books in the past, and we have written about it, a short paper on comprehension aiding supplementation. But there are two kinds of comprehension aiding supplementation. One is linguistic supplementation, and the other is non-linguistic supplementation. And a lot of people, what they do is they use non-linguistic supplementation, which is one is drawing, and number two would be like a clear speech and slow speech. And then another thing would be like gestures, and then facial expressions. That is what they do. But for the input to be optimal, it's not just, the input cannot be just comprehensible and interesting. It has been very emphasized, these two parts, comprehensible input and interesting input. And Dr. Krashen talks about compelling input, yeah? But I think it's very difficult to have compelling input all the time in every class for everybody in a classroom, because we've got to tell not just one story in a month, we've got to tell the story almost every day to children or the students or the people at refugee center, okay, for language acquisition. It's not an activity. Story listening is not an activity. It is a core method. And so we tell a story in every class. If you have four classes a week, you tell a story 4 times a week. And if you have more time to tell one story, you tell 2 stories and 3 stories like I do. But anyway, not just one comprehensible. You have to make it comprehensible. If it isn't comprehensible, there is no language acquisition. So you have got to make it comprehensible. And then you have to make it interesting so that the kids or those people will keep listening to you. And then the other two are I find the other two very important, and these two have not been discussed much. The other two is rich input and abundant input. Okay, these 4 are the 4 characteristics of optimal input. Not only that, it has to be the no accountability part has to be included. And so,
what do you mean by rich input?
very
What exactly does rich mean in this context?
Very good. That's a great question.
This came up.
Yeah. Rich input does not mean difficult words. Okay. When you tell stories with too many difficult words, they won't listen because it will be incomprehensible. Okay. So what I mean by rich is this. The story or the language or the words or structures that you use to tell the story to students, I would say 99.5% must be comprehensible. Okay. Only just 0.5% is incomprehensible or new words or new structure. Okay. But the thing is, when you are telling stories, I think 99.5% is comprehensible for these people who are sitting in front of me, like 30 kids or 30 college students in my case.
Mm-hmm.
The words that I use are not all comprehensible to them. Although I think they should, the words that I'm using should be comprehensible because they are first year in college. But then there are so many different levels of proficiencies among the 30 students. It's not just the number of words, the level of understanding of each word is different. Okay. Mm-hmm. Everything is so different. And so if I say something like incessantly. I want to use the word incessantly because the text uses the word incessantly, and I want the students to be able to read the text later so that that story listening will be guided to or will help them to start reading, and it makes them it will make it easier for them to start reading or keep reading. And therefore, I'd like to use I use the story, which is when I do a story listening, I use a written story, not just the story that I have heard, but I use a written text. And so in the written text, for example, there is a word called incessantly, and I know that my students don't know that word. Okay, and then I start saying all the time. Okay, for example, this mosquito buzzed around him all the time. This mosquito flew around him without stopping. This mosquito flew around this man incessantly. Okay, and then I try to guide the students to understand this new word, what it means. But then, if I said something like I say I wasn't prepared to talk about this, so I'm having some difficulty in coming up with an explanation. But while I'm explaining this, well, the example that I just used is not quite accurate. But if I said all the time, without stopping, this without stopping could be somebody's I+1. Yeah.
Okay.
And then they would say, oh, without stopping means all the time, incessantly. And so, this incessantly could be somebody, like out of 30 students, for the 5 students, it could be I+1. But for the other 25 students, this without stopping could become their I+1. And so with a story listening is like it's not just telling a story. It's about explaining. It's about describing. It's about commenting. And so you just don't say, once upon a time, there was an old man. You don't say that. Once upon a time, there was a man. And you draw a picture of a man. And I say, he was an old man. And you start drawing a picture of adding beard and the wrinkles. And then you say, he was 95 years old. And then the students are listening and think, oh, an old man, but now he's a 95-year-old old man. There's a difference between 65 and 95, yeah? And then you say, he was not young. And then the thing is, you see, this is the order was a little bit different. I just goofed up. But what I'm saying is, you use antonyms and synonyms and other ways to explain. And so this is story listening. And it's not storytelling. When you do storytelling, like my husband is a man from Iowa in the United States. And he wanted to do story listening, like I was doing. He watched me do it, and he wanted to do it. And so he memorized the story of the sun, the north wind and the sun. And he went to his classroom at a university, and he told a story about the north wind and the sun, wind and the sun. My husband told me half the students went to sleep because they didn't understand. Because he was telling a story, he remembered the storyline, and he was telling the story as well as a native speaker can do, with a native speaker accent and the pronunciation. But the kids didn't understand, didn't think it was interesting, so they went to sleep. And so, story listening teacher needs to know what the kids are like, what they understand, what they don't understand, and what they're ready to understand. And so you just go from different angles to help them understand the flow of the story and the words, and that is story.
So while you're saying all this, well, Dr. Mason, are you still there?
Oh,
I think she froze.
Yes, for a moment.
Let's see if she
comes back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, while she's saying, while she's explaining all this, I'm imagining, the session that Professor Krashen did at Langfest, and indeed, he's saying one thing and he's writing it out, he's drawing it out, complementing, I guess, this whole technique. But meanwhile, let's give a shout out to everybody who's watching live right now. Thank you for joining in on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I do see some comments. Maybe we could throw up some comments on the screen.
Yes.
She'll be coming back in.
She will come back, I think. Yes. Let's just thank Ayesha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
At the same time.
Good morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good morning. Good evening. For him. Good morning, also Ricky. Hello. Hello. Welcome back. We're just thanking those who are following us from Buenos Dias, Frances.
Oh.
So we've got some folks.
Alessia today. Good morning from Palma de Mallorca. Great.
So thank you for joining our session today. We are talking about story listening, not story telling per se. And we have Dr. Beniko Mason from Shitennoji University, Japan, to tell us all about this. Yes. And she was telling us how I think, the way I understand this is that you have a story that serves as a platform, I guess, for your teaching. And rather than the story itself being, I guess, the principal part, is the pieces and how you use each piece to represent a grammatical concept. So often, I think teachers will have a grammatical concept and they say, I have a story to illustrate this, but that's not, in this case, it's actually you have a story with different pieces that can, I guess, present the emotions that you want to teach. That's how I understand it so far.
But the aim is not to teach grammar, or the purpose is not to teach the words. The students don't have to understand the word incessantly. They don't have to remember it.
Important point.
They don't have to remember. I'm not trying to teach. The reason why I use that word is, and I lead the students to understand the word by using other words, is because only because the word is written in the text, and I want the students to be able to read the text without having difficulty, without having And so if they don't understand it, it's fine, because the word will come up again sometime in the future.
So the way I understood it, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm inspired by the pictures that you have in your background, but I understand the story listening, like telling a story. I know you don't like the term of telling a story, but sharing a story that is maybe only two-dimensional, but by adding the different synonyms, antonyms, by exploring the whole text, you give it another dimension. It's like making it a three-dimensional.
Very good, yes.
And giving that depth that maybe is something that usually we don't do when we tell stories in the conventional way. But by looking very closely at the different details, you can see, oh, that's actually, you see how the pencil or the stroke was done, and you go really into detail, and then you step back and you get a better understanding of everything. You don't need to see all the little pieces and points of the color, but I like this approach that you have, and the way that you are exploring actually the stories. And when you mentioned that when you are in front of a classroom, you don't really know what the students or children, whoever it is, know and what they don't know, right? We can only assume what they might know or understand or not. Maybe we can read their faces or see when they get stuck as I don't understand anything anymore, and then we can explain. So it reminded me a little bit to the cloze test that we do when we are choosing texts for children, right? Or for people, where you try to find a text that the person can understand to 80-90%. Otherwise, they will just lose the interest, like you just mentioned with the example of your husband telling a story. Is there any kind of relation between how you do the story listening and choosing a text to read?
Good.
Is there something?
Yes, that's it. I call it guided self-selected reading. I do not like the word extensive reading anymore. I used to call it extensive reading because I didn't know much about what I was doing at the beginning. And then I really liked the idea of using graded readers. And so I was calling it extensive reading. And in fact, the paper that Dr. Krashen and I published in 1997 is called Extensive Reading in a Foreign Language. Okay. But I really regret that I began to use, I used to call it extensive reading. The reason why I hate it is because when you talk about extensive reading, there's always intensive reading coming with it. It's a pair, extensive reading and intensive reading. And extensive reading is to develop fluency, and intensive reading is develop accuracy. But the thing is, the idea that Dr. Krashen has of this idea of second language acquisition theory is that input alone can cause both accuracy and fluency, both. And so I call it guided self-selected reading. And then what I do is just like you said, I prepare, I don't know, maybe 50 graded readers at the very easy level, which I am almost like 90% sure that my students can read easily without much troubles. And then I've got 50 different titles and maybe like 5 different copies of each title at the university library. And then I take them to the library and I say, now, these are the books you can choose. And then I do not have them start going to a different shelves to, so that, because when they start doing reading in a foreign language, they don't know which books to start, which levels to start. They don't know what to do. And so the first thing I do is my goal is to have them help them experience pleasure and success, and have them see hope in the I don't know if I call it endeavor, but effort of trying to start reading books. Everybody wants to become good in reading books in English nowadays. And all my students, they all want to become good in English, but the way how they have been guided or taught has not helped them to reach the goal. And with the guided self-selected reading, they can read it very easily. Maybe there might be one or two words that they don't understand or they don't know how to pronounce them. Then they'll come to me and say, oh, what does this mean? Or how do you pronounce this? Is this a man's name or a name of a city? And then I can tell them what they are, because I have read them all. And so I guide them to the books. And then, and then I say if they can read, like in one book in 10 minutes, I asked them if they could read 3 books a day. And then they would say, sure. And then I start having them read books like 100 pages per week. And then that is my guided self-selected reading. They start, I first guide them, but then soon they can start self-select books that they want to read. So.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sure you're doing the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good too.
I was going to say, I provided a question about whether story listening, as opposed to grammar studying, which I think we all understand now, but as opposed to story reading, one is listening, the other is reading, which is better? But just from what you've been explaining right now, it seems to me that they're complementary, and you do want to use both. Is there any more that you can any more insights into this these two, I guess, dimensions?
Oh, you mean story reading means students read books?
Correct. Okay. Well, reading. I had the impression that listening to a story that you prepared for us as a teacher is better than me reading that same story. But is that the case, or is this you should do both?
You're talking about the same story.
Well, similar, I guess, similar level story, similar level of guided, I guess, guided selected reading that you're talking about.
Okay. You know, it's very interesting. I use a text to tell a story. Yeah, I have a text of a story, and I make a list of the words from the text, and I tell a story, and I do synonyms and antonyms and explanations, definitions. I say a story listening teacher is not only a picture dictionary, but also a thesaurus. And so I do that, yeah. And then students enjoy telling the story, listening to the story, and it is really satisfying when they spontaneously clap their hands after they finish listening to the story. You know, after I say the end, and they go, yeah, and I'm so, it's so, that's such a satisfaction. But and then I tell my students, if you want to, you can take a copy of this text and copy of my prompter with the Japanese definitions. You can go home and read these texts, and with the help of the dictionary. With the a list of the words with Japanese definitions. I would say 3/4 of the students don't even take them. They're not interested in reading the text because they heard the story already. So the students would rather go to the library and pick up story that they want to read, because story listening is I pick the story. I'm just telling the story, although the story is interesting, I think, but then they don't want to do it again. And so what I do is that the students who take the text in the word list, they told me that they read it afterwards, and they made sure what they understood was correct, and they liked having the text in the word list. But most students are not that motivated, and so and then story listening does not require any homework, and so it's not necessary. But then I think it's probably better, or what I do is I do not ask my students to read the text of the story that I tell. I just take them to the library and they can pick their books. So story reading in my case is not the same story that I tell, but the graded readers that they choose. Did I answer your question?
Sure, absolutely. So again, now let's switch sort of gears from the technique itself and go to the recipients. You teach, I guess, mainly adults. Our target audience are more about raising children. And I want to know, other than the age, what are the characteristics of language learners that are more or less suited for story listening? Age or culture, social status, learning difficulties, impairments. What are the different characteristics that you I guess are conscious of and you consider when you use this technique?
Tetsu, I love your question.
Thank you.
You know what? Story listening is suitable for everybody. Small children love to hear stories, and senior citizens love to hear stories. There are so many different kinds of stories in the world, free on the internet, okay? Long ones and short ones and complicated ones and simple ones. There are so many. And there are so many themes and topics and characters. And I mean, so interesting. And so it's for everybody. It is for the beginning level or starter level students. It can be done for the advanced level students. It can be done for motivated students. And it can be done for the unmotivated, reluctant kids. Story listening is for everybody. Okay, and I don't teach 3-year-old kids, or I don't teach kindergarten kids anymore, but I used to have a private lessons, and I used to teach like 3, 4, 5-year-old kids, kindergarten kids. No, they would sit on my lap, and I will just read the book. I would sit in front of the chalkboard, and I tell a story. I've done that for the first graders. Although when I do that, I do speak a little bit of Japanese too, because I've got to tell them once upon a time means this in Japanese. Ne? And I have to say one day means this in Japanese. These key words I've got to tell them so that they will understand the scene is changing to the next scene type of thing. But once you teach them, from the next time they understand it, and so it's okay. So the little children is okay, and or the senior citizens is fine. I teach senior citizens right now, and I just love talking to them, telling them stories. Culture. Well, you have to choose the different stories for different culture, I guess, and then if you're doing this at refugee center, you may not want to bring up some stories where there are some violence and things like that, and so you've got to be careful. But I think there are enough stories that you can choose from, and so you can do it for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have a question now, because you mentioned before, for example, a group of people where you don't know where they stand in their language development or language acquisition or learning. So you cannot know exactly what part of the story that you are sharing they actually understand. And I think this reflects also a little bit the situation in a family, right? Where you share a story maybe with a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And how can you keep them all just listening to what you're saying? I mean, we sometimes can't, it's just simple like that. But how can I think that is something that we are interested in, because we want to share these stories in your way. So what would be your suggestions on how to keep them engaged or interested in this compelling story that you mentioned?
Yes. See, usually we used to say teachers would focus on the middle. You may have students who don't know any much. You have students are really good, but we have to focus in the middle type of thing. No, with story listening, you can focus everybody. You can use different words from the easiest ones to the very difficult ones. So the guys, the children, the older children who understand much more can hear the word which they have never heard before, but that really, hits their heart. I don't know if this word is appropriate, but then like the word devotion, instead of saying love, instead of saying I hate, you can talk about detest, or those difficult low frequency words, betrayal, treachery type of thing. And then the little kids may not understand what treachery is, but then because if you explain about what kind of a evil act or evil deed the person did, to the other person, a little children understand it.
Yes.
And so you can do this with the in fact, I've got a class right now with some students who have very little English, and I've got some students who have been with me for like 12 years. And so but then the students who don't understand much can understand only about 50% of the story, unfortunately, when the story is very long, like 30 minutes and stuff like that. But still, the person who says I only understand 50%, but she keeps coming, she keeps coming to the class, and she says that she looks forward to the next story and things like that. So she says she understands only 50, but then she may be understanding more than 50%. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is possible if you have I think it's possible to have I don't know if you can have 3-year-old kid, but you can have like 7-year-old child and a 15-year-old child and 18-year-old child. Mm-hmm. And then you can still tell a significant story and have them understand.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Oh, good. I'm glad that you agree with me, Ute.
yes, absolutely. No, I was also thinking, especially when you involve the children or you involve the whole group and you have the thesaurus next to you or vocabulary so that you can involve them. Yeah, those who are maybe getting a bit bored because you're explaining more about the synonyms, etc., but they can look them up and actually be involved in the whole procedure, in the whole process.
Right. But I have written about when story listening fails.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things is that when you start explaining too much,
Yeah,
and then you lose them.
yeah.
And so when in my case, when the story gets to be too complicated or the words are too difficult, then I just use a translation. But for the young child, you can't use translation when you're doing a heritage language. I don't know. You may be able to. I don't know.
So I think one of the very important parts in all this is also not to lose the pace of the story, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why I say when you are telling a story and when you're drawing a picture, never turn your back to the students and keep drawing, because you're so afraid of not being able to do the drawing right. So you pay more attention about how you're drawing. That's not a good idea.
Okay.
So yeah, you just drawing is not that all that important as long as the students understand what you're drawing about. Yes, the pace is very important. You should never stop talking. You keep talking and talking, having the students listen to you talk, your voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, we've been getting questions from our audience. We might want to select something. Let's see here. I have the first one from Anna. So here's one popping up.
Hi.
Hello, Anna. Thank you for your question. So I would like to know what Professor thinks about using picture books with young children. Will the pictures make them understand the story better, or actually distract them from the listening, the natural flow?
Good question.
All right, good question,
I love
Anna.
the question. People like to use picture books to tell a story. That's not a good idea. Sorry about this. Sorry about that. You don't need a picture book. You don't have to spend 2,000 yen, $20 to buy an expensive picture book. You don't need that. You can maybe go to the library and have the students, look at the picture books later. But when you do story listening, this is another thing that I love about my story listening. You don't need any money. All you need is a chalkboard and chalk. The reason why I say I don't think it's a good idea to show a picture book is when you show a picture book, there are lots of things on the picture. And when you're talking about this man who has difficulty in earning money, and then I don't know if you're going to talk about a man who is having difficulty in earning money to 3-year-old kids in a picture book, but when you are talking about something, because there are lots of other pictures and things on the picture book, the kids might be looking at something else, But if you have a chalkboard and you just draw a man's face and say, when you're talking about this man, they're all they're looking at is this man on the board. Okay. Picture books are beautifully illustrated, but why do you want to spend money?
So it is a distraction, I guess, from your.
Yeah, because we're doing is language acquisition. We're not. See, lots of people make. I shouldn't say lots of people. Some people say like we can teach culture, or we can teach them morals, or we can teach something else. And I always think I'm not there to teach morals. I'm here to teach language. And so if they get something out of the story, that's their, that's what they want to do. I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to say, you got to be an honest man type of thing. When you talk about Pinocchio, I'm not going to say you should never lie. Yeah, I don't say that. The story should tell the image. I'm just telling them.
Yes, so as far as I understand, well, the picture book is too distracting for the story listening that you want to do for the but it might be maybe helpful for someone who doesn't know yet what I don't know the tree is. So, but it's not. We are going, I think, in a direction that we don't want to go. And I think your response to Anna is actually, it might be too distracting and also block somehow the flowing of the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if we come back to again to our students, our kids, I'd like to know. I mean, there's different ways to convey a story. I don't want to use. I'm sort of kind of going around the word tell, but either way, you as a teacher, you tell the story in your way. You use that as a platform to get them to learn it. But there are other types of inputs that we can get, whether it's audio, audio books, or TV, or reading. Are there better sources when they're maybe outside of the classroom that you think that you can recommend? Are they all equally good depending on the kid? Maybe I don't know. Some people are more listeners. Some people are more readers.
Yeah. Okay. Now, see, story listening is not for the people who can listen to TED Talk. Okay, TED Talks. Story listening is not for the people who can read research papers. Okay, story listening is for the people, for the students or children who are learning another language, in my case, foreign language. For Ute's case, that language which is not spoken outside, only maybe the parent speaks. Okay, that's the kind of a thing that we're talking about. I'm not let's see. Yeah, and so for somebody like who already know the language quite well, then it is maybe a good idea to watch a movie and listen to podcast and all that things. But as I said, story listening aims to provide optimal input to the listeners in the classroom for natural language acquisition. That means the time that you have, like 30 minutes or 50 minutes, 90 minutes, I want to use this time as efficiently as possible. And that means I have to provide optimal input, which is comprehensible, interesting, rich, and abundant for the students who are sitting there. Now, when you listen to something, which is pre-made, the recording cannot adjust the language for the kids in front of the kids who are listening to. And so I would say for the children or students that I am interested in helping, I don't think those things are helpful. I mean, maybe helpful a little bit, okay? But when you think about the time and effort, I would say story listening that the teacher does for the sake of the providing a comprehensive, optimal input to the students that she loves, the mother loves, is probably better. What do you think?
So you're saying if you're a parent and you provide a story, you can actually adjust the moving parts and make it fit your child. If you buy a CD or watch a movie, that's already pre-made for a general audience. It's not customized,
Right.
tailor-made.
Right.
So.
Yes. It's somehow you can be the puppet player.
Mm-hmm.
You have the strings in your hand, right? You can somehow adjust to the audience, to the needs of the audience.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like having the babysitter tell a story for your kids instead of I telling my own child telling the story so that the child will understand the significance of the story, type of meaning of the story, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the babysitter, will she care about your child? No. I mean, some babysitters might care. Yeah. But what I'm saying is the recorded CDs, recorded audios. Will they care about your child? No. I wouldn't have that do that for your child. I mean, if you can't tell a story to your kids, then you may want to have the videos take care of your child. But why can't we, do that for 15 minutes for your children?
Yeah, it's maybe also more accentuating the fact that there is a connection while telling the story, while sharing the story. So there is a conversation going on, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
which is maybe not happening if it's on screen or if it's in the audiobook, unless maybe, and this is maybe what Tetsu had also in mind, unless we watch something together with our children and say, oh, what do you think happens next? It's in this way we can make maybe also a story that is on a screen or that we are listening to through an audiobook. And then we stop it and say, oh, what just happened? And what did he say? And how did he say it? We can still use these other kind of resources in interactive way.
Right. If that was mother and child, that would be good, I think, because because it's a close relationship. But it's not a good idea the teacher doing this for 30 kids. Stop the video and say, "What do you think happened? What do you think is going to happen next?" It's like testing the kids. Yeah, testing the comprehension, and that is that raises the affective filter. And that is the part of the thing that we call, I think Dr. Krashen talks about, no accountability. We don't care how much they understand. As much as they understand is fine. They can develop their own natural language acquisition on their own pace, on their pace.
Okay.
So we are getting near the top of the hour. As interesting as the discussion is, and we've got loads of I guess questions and comments still in the chat box, and I'm sorry we can't get to all of them, but we will have to wrap up pretty soon. Let's maybe put up one last one. I'm going to put it up. I think I know the answer to this question, but we have a question from Francis. During story listening, do you ask your students to repeat the words, or is it just you all the time drawing and telling the story?
Right. Story listening does not do any pre-teaching of vocabulary. We do not do any comprehension questions.
Mm-hmm.
We do not artificially repeat and circle the words and structures. And we do not do any after story listening activities either. We don't have to have them talk about it in the target language, or we do not have them write about it in the target language. We do not have them role play the story, nothing of things like that. Well, I shouldn't say we, because I think I'm probably the only one who is doing this. And not very many teachers are doing the way how I'm doing, I don't think, because even when they tell a story with drawings and things like that, usually they have activities afterwards. But what Dr. Krashen and I think or have researched, and the result is that when you add form-focused activities, when you add conscious learning activities into story listening, like an input alone type of thing, then it takes away the effect of story listening. It spoils it. It spoils it. I've done a study of I shouldn't say many, but several studies where I told a story, and afterwards I do activities, like I read the story and have the students underline the words. I have the students repeat after me, or I do the other activities. And then for the other class, I just tell a story. And later, like 5 weeks later, I tried to find out how much words they remembered. And then what I found was that the group who only listened remembered more than the group who did stories and did activities. Activities ruins story listening. So it's better. I think it's best that you don't do anything. You just enjoy telling the story and have kids enjoy the story, and that's it.
And I find this a very, very important and powerful message that you're giving here today, because at least my part of the world, and I think it's almost everywhere, many teachers and many parents also are under this pressure. Okay, you give the input to the child, but then try to apply it in different contexts and ask the child if they understood, etc. But actually what we are doing, we're pushing them away from understanding, right?
Yes.
So the most natural way that you are aiming at, or that you are describing here, is the one, just relax and enjoy the story, and explore the words or that you are using in that moment. Yeah. Okay.
In that moment.
So much.
Yeah. I sort of wonder if I'm going too far by saying, forget all grammar, forget all language concepts, and focus on delivering that story in the most comprehensible, most engaging manner for the child. So you're in that bubble with that story, and you do whatever it takes for the recipient to understand and enjoy the story. Who cares about the
right? Because
the actual grammar rules, I guess.
Right. This Dr. Krashen says, ironically, when you do it that way, they acquire the grammar and vocabulary more.
Yeah. Well, I can confirm this. I learned, or I acquired Italian not in a formal setting. And when I was 12 years old, someone asked me about the rules of grammar in Italian sentences, etc., compared to German. And I knew it from German, but I didn't know it from Italian. But somehow intuitively, or let's say in a very spontaneous way, I saw the mechanism, but I never learned them before. So these are things that it's quite powerful. It's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Ute.
Yes.
Yes. Sono andata in Germania per imparare la lingua tedesca.
Addirittura in Germania per imparare il tedesco?
Ja.
Che bello. Non l'ho mai sentito.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. Ich habe an der Universität Deutsch studiert.
Ja, das habe ich mal irgendwo gelesen, genau. Ja, da können wir auch Deutsch und Italienisch miteinander sprechen. Und Tetsu kann mitreden, weil ich weiß, dass er beide Sprachen kennt.
じゃあ次は日本語でいきましょうか。
Now I'm out.
Well, Dr. Mason can cover all the languages that we have here. But well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, like I said, we can continue forever, and as much as we do want that, we are at the top of the hour. It is very late in Japan, but thank you again for sharing your expertise, your insights. We've got quite a few comments of just thanks from our folks, but we do need to move on. So, but again, just a very quick shout out to the folks. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Azra. It goes on. It goes on. Perhaps, Dr. Mason, you can go and check the recording. You can see some of the comments, maybe answer more to their questions. But we have to move on. But thank you, Dr. Mason, once again. Uta will now tell us about our next session coming up, and that's in 2 weeks. So, Uta, please.
Yes. So on Tuesday, the 15th of March, it is on.
There you go.
On 15th of March, we have the pleasure to have...
Sorry about that.
Okay. So on the Tuesday of 15th of March, we have the pleasure to have Dr. Sun He from the National Institute of Education in Nanyang Technological University in Singapore as our guest. She will share her findings and insights about language experience and early heritage language learning. As most studies focus mainly on language input, she will share about the importance of the language output. So please join us on Tuesday, 15th of March, and this time at 4 p.m. Singapore time, which is 4 a.m. New York. Sorry for that, Tetsu. 8 a.m. London and 9 a.m. Paris.
Fantastic. So do come back. It's same channel, same time, same channel, but not the same time specifically. But I'll be there. I know folks in Europe, and it's also a good time in Asia. So please tune in. Once again, huge huge thank you to Dr. Mason and your cat.
Grazie.
And
Grazie.
we will see everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Tot de volgende keer. Alla prossima.
Auf Wiedersehen.
ありがとうございました。